And this is what I was kind of leading up to before, that all these negative features of Islam, these psychological barriers. So the worst possible sin is saying Jesus Christ is Lord. It's the worst sin you can commit in Islam. You're going to have to give up your family or have a very strained relationship with your family forever. And beyond that, the penalty for leaving Islam, according to Muhammad, is death. Muhammad said, if anyone leaves his Islamic religion, kill him. And so fortunately, it doesn't get carried out much in the West because lots of Muslims believe you need an Islamic state to be carrying that out and not just like a random person doing it. So that's fortunate. But there's nothing that says, oh, only in an Islamic state. So you always have to wonder, is someone going to carry this penalty out at some point? So anyway, when we're preaching the gospel, the good news, what a Muslim is hearing is, oh, you want me to believe this thing, which will force me to give up my family, my friends. I don't just mean mom and dad. I mean cousins, aunts, uncles, my entire community. I have to give all that up and maybe get my head chopped off and then definitely get me sent to hell. Like you guys are calling that the good. It sounds like the worst news ever. You guys are calling it the good news. But all these things actually become good because when a Muslim has wrestled with these issues and eventually gets to the point where he thinks, you know what? I may have to give up my entire family. And this may get my head chopped off. And I've been told all my life this will get me sent to hell. You know what? I want to know Jesus anyway. That's someone who is already like that's someone who will lay down his life for Jesus. He's already willing to give up everything to know Jesus. And so it's not this easy, hey, why don't you pray with me to receive Christ? And it's not costing a person anything. It's already costing him everything.
I see.
And so that's someone who will lay down his life for Jesus. And that's why I realized afterwards, oh, these guys make really awesome Christians. That's why I kept up with it afterwards.
All over the world, something quiet, yet extraordinary is happening. Men and women raised in Islam are beginning to ask unimaginable questions, not out of rebellion, not out of hatred, but out of a desperate hunger for truth. They were taught from birth what they must believe and what they must never question. They were warned that leaving Islam could cost them everything, their families, their communities, and even their lives. Yet, despite the fear and the pressure, many are still stepping forward. Why? Because once a soul truly begins to search for truth, fear can no longer silence it. Sit back and listen to David Wood while he shares the remarkable story behind why so many Muslims are leaving Islam for Christianity. Not because of emotional manipulation, but because of honest investigation, courageous conversations, and a growing realization that the evidence points somewhere else. This is a story of friendship that refused to lie, of questions that refused to die, and of Jesus Christ revealing himself to those who were willing to count the cost. This isn't about attacking people, but about exposing ideas and rescuing souls. And as you will soon discover, when someone is willing to lose everything just to know Jesus, that's not weakness, that's faith. Stay with us.
It's very common to say, okay, it's great, Muslims believe in God, they believe in Jesus to an extent, they believe in miracles and all this, so we'd have a bunch of common ground, but for purposes of Islam taking over the world and shaking that up a bit, I think it's good if people convert to anything else until some of that power structure is broken. A little bit way when I was locked up. So this was in the 1990s, and but Muslims weren't the main alternative back then. The alternative was a cult called the Five Percenters. They were a more radical offshoot of the Nation of Islam, and so but they were the biggest like non-Christian group, and so had more interactions with them. But I did know Muslims, hung out with Muslims. That's why I started studying a little bit, just to basically whatever they told me, I would go and look it up. I would react to whatever anyone was saying. So any cult or anything, they started talking to me. I was like, oh, well, give me your sources and stuff like that. And I would go start looking it up. But I really started after in 2001 because I became best friends with Nabil Qureshi. And at that point, I was just studying Islam just because my best friend was a Muslim. If he'd been a Mormon or something, I would have been studying Mormonism. But he was a Muslim, and then eventually he became a Christian about 4 years later, and I actually thought, cool, I'm done with Islam. That was the only reason I was studying Islam. And it was kind of watching the stand that he took for Jesus that I realized, maybe I need to keep on. Maybe I need to keep up with this. And even before that, it was everyone started attacking him. Like he got his first death threat attached to his car. And it was about a month. He hadn't even been announcing it, so very few people knew. And he got his first death threat attached to his car. And then I was just thinking, I can't leave him by himself to face people who are going to be hostile towards him. And so you're going to have to talk to both those. But yeah, over time, I realized, wow, these guys make really cool Christians. And there's, by the way, there's a reason for that, really important reason. So you take a Muslim, they're basically raised from the time they're born to believe that the worst possible sin you can commit is shirk. It's the worst sin.
Which is what?
Shirk. That's associating a partner with Allah. So if it's not just Allah alone, if it's anything else, Trinity, Jesus is the Son of God, that's all shirk. It's the unforgivable sin. Doesn't mean you can't be forgiven of it. It means that's the only one Allah won't forgive if it hasn't been repented of. Meaning you could be a murderer and he might just forgive you and you don't know. Shirk, he guarantees he's not going to forgive you of that. And so Muslims are raised all their life basically to understand if you say Jesus is Lord or Jesus is the Son of God, that is the worst possible sin. Well, guess what? That's what we're preaching. They also understand that if they convert, very, very, very high probability that they're going to lose their families. And you basically get two versions of this. You basically get what you just converted, get out of here. We don't ever want to talk to you again unless you come back as a Muslim. And then you'll have the others who spend a year or two trying to convert the person back. So they'll take you around to Muslim scholars and so on to try and convert you back to Islam after you've left Islam. And Nabil's family was like that.Is dad took him around the world, to Europe and to Canada to talk to various Muslim scholars to try and convince him to come back to Islam. Nabil was just another student. I got out of prison and took a communications class, and I gave a speech. And the professor ran the speech and debate team. And she said, you should come check out the speech and debate team. I think you'd fit in well. That's where I met Nabil. Nabil joined the speech and debate team as well. That's where we met. And then you go to competitions at other schools. And so we went on a school trip. We ended up in a hotel room together. And at that point, all I knew was his name was Nabil Qureshi. So he's some sort of Muslim, but that doesn't tell you if he's liberal or devout or what. And so I had no idea. But we get in the hotel room. I go on my bed and I'm reading the Bible in a year, and I'm in Isaiah at that point. And so I'm reading Isaiah and see this guy out of the corner of my eye unpacking. And then I see him pull out his prayer rug. And I was like, okay, he's at least devout enough to bring a prayer rug on a couple-day school trip. So doesn't seem terribly liberal here. But then I start praying. This is right after 9/11. And I start praying and I say, okay, God, if you want me to talk to this guy, can you have him start the discussion? Because I don't want everyone saying I'm attacking the Muslim because of 9/11 or something like that. Right. And right after I said that, all of a sudden he goes, so are you a hardcore Christian?
Did he say it like that?
Yeah, exactly like that. Like that weird tone and stuff. Are you a hardcore Christian? And I said, yes, I am. And that started our discussions that weekend, and we just ended up becoming best friends really quickly because other people on the team, they would, like after the competitions, they would like go out to clubs and stuff like this. We weren't interested. So every trip like that, we always ended up hanging out in the room together, and we would inevitably start talking about Christianity and Islam. And we both loved it. We both loved arguing about the stuff. So we got along really well, and we just became best friends really quick. So, it was about 4 years later, he became a Christian after we spent probably the first 2 to 2.5 years focusing almost exclusively on Christian topics. So we were talking about, did Jesus die by crucifixion? Did he rise from the dead? What did he claim about himself? Is the New Testament reliable? We were talking about those over and over again. And eventually we started talking about what about Muhammad and the Quran here? What about these claims about Muhammad and the Quran? So we started looking into that. And that's pretty, keep in mind, I'm learning as I go. I'm learning how to interact with Muslims as we go. And historically, that's pretty standard. And you can see why. The emphasis in Christianity is always be prepared to give a defense for the hope that you have, right? That's what we're commanded to do. We're commanded to give a defense for what we believe. In Islam, it's just attack the Jewish positions, attack Christian positions. It's all attacking. And so you get into a discussion, it's normally, hey, the Trinity doesn't make sense. Hey, how can you believe that Jesus is God? Where did he say, I am God, worship me? Your Bible's been corrupted. All these things, all these attacks, and then Christians trying to defend it. Well, that's just the pattern we kind of fell into. But after a while, it just hit me like, why aren't we talking about whether your guy's a prophet? And why aren't we talking about whether your book is the word of God? Why don't we apply the standards we're applying to my beliefs, to your beliefs? And that's really, really good. That, as far as I can tell, is like the best scenario. Having two friends discussing these issues. Because we agreed early on, like probably in the first, it might have been that first series of discussions we had, like that weekend. If not, it was very soon after that where we basically laid some groundwork and concluded there are three possibilities here. Either you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong, or we're both wrong. We agree that we're not both right because we're saying completely contradictory stuff. So it's possible that something else is true and that we're both wrong. But we don't believe that we're both wrong. We believe that one of us is right on this because you believe one thing, I believe. So we're agreeing on the fact that one of us is right in this. And if one of us is right, we have to take it seriously that God put us together in that room to have these discussions so that whoever's right can convince whoever's wrong. And therefore, we need to take this seriously. This is not a joke. We're taking it as like a task from God that we have to get to the bottom of this. And that if we ever abandon that it's like we're abandoning a mission from God. He wasn't genuinely open to the truth of Christianity. Like, I believed I'm here from God to talk to this dude. He believed he's there from God to get things across to me. So, so we ended up having these discussions for a long time. It was about 4 years later that he became a Christian. Even before that, his confidence in Islam was dropping. But he was compensating by acting more devout. Like, he started signing his emails, humble servant of the truth, blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't talk like that. What are you doing? But there's this tendency to compensate when you're starting to have doubts. And that's good advice for everyone. If you have a Muslim friend and you're talking to a Muslim friend, because I hear this all the time, like, David, I've been trying to talk to my Muslim friend, but the more reasons I give him, the more bold in Islam he seems. Like, yeah, that's pretty much every time.
You want him.
It's pretty much every time. And so, so he eventually left Islam. It was a big issue for his family and parents and everyone. But I saw the stand that he was taking. He did his first debate like a few months later and just crushed a guy because he'd already been through it. He'd been wrestling with the deity of Christ so much. By the time he stepped up there and debated it, it was like rapid fire taken through the entire New Testament. And so anyway, at some point along those lines, I was like, maybe I need to stick with Islam because all those negative things that keep a Muslim in Islam because of all the psychological pressure. So again, it's they're told all their lives this is the worst possible sin. And apart from that, they understand that they're going to have to give up their families. Their families may stick with them for a while to try and convert them back, but eventually, if it doesn't work, we don't want you, because they don't want you around your cousins. They don't want you influencing other people. So stay away from here. And they're very serious about that. Now, fortunately for Nabil, his parents did continue a relationship with him, so that was way better situation than the vast majority of what I've seen.
When Muslims leave Islam for Christianity, it's rarely because life becomes easier. In fact, it usually becomes much harder. From the moment a Muslim begins to seriously consider Jesus, not as a prophet, but as Lord, everything becomes at stake. They know what it means. They've been warned their entire lives. To confess Christ is not just a theological disagreement. It's seen as betrayal, shame, and the ultimate spiritual crime. For many, it means being cut off from parents they love, from their siblings with whom they grew up, and their entire communities that once felt like home. Some are watched closely, some are threatened, and some are told plainly, "You are no longer one of us." And yet, they keep searching for the truth. Why would someone walk toward rejection, isolation, and fear, unless they had encountered something greater than all of it? What David Wood says in this story is not a shallow conversion or an emotional impulse. It's the slow, painful, honest journey of someone willing to test the truth, no matter where it leads. Someone who examined Christianity not because it was safe, but because it demanded answers. And this is where the gospel becomes unmistakable. Because Jesus never promised comfort. He promised the truth, life, and he promised that those who seek will find. When a Muslim chooses Christ, knowing the cost, it is not weakness. It is courage. It is the cry of a soul that has found something worth losing everything for. And as David Wood continues to speak, you'll see how one friendship, guided by patience and truth, became the doorway through which the light of Christ broke in. Listen carefully, because this is the beginning of a life being transformed.
Like, what was the final straw? I know he's got a book before he passed. I forget the name of it, but...
Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we kind of gone through all the arguments and reasons and so on.
Yep.
And I tend to ask people, like, why do you believe that this is true? What are your reasons? Because that tells me what I need to study to see if those are good reasons or not. And at that first weekend when we're having these discussions, it's because Islam is proven by history and by mathematics and by prophecy and by this and reason and logic, and everything supported Islam, according to him. And so we eventually start going through that stuff. And this was probably a year before he converted, when we had started talking about Islamic topics. And he found out there's all this stuff that he'd never heard about before in his sources. Because I'm going through his sources and I'm going, hey, you told me to read this source because this is going to show this. Well, look what I actually found. And I asked him again about a year, because I noticed he'd changed and he wasn't, the scientific miracles. He wasn't saying all this stuff anymore. And so I asked him about a year before he converted, and I go, hey, so why do you believe that Islam is true? Why are you still a Muslim? And he said 2 reasons. He said, 1, it makes sense to me. And 2, the people I feel the presence of God on most strongly are my grandparents, and they're Muslims. And on the one hand, that's interesting because it went from all this proof that Islam is true to something else. But that was actually terrifying, if anything can be like, oh no, what do I do here? Because if you say science proves that Islam is true, that's something we can open the books. You can show me what you're quoting that you think is some sort of miraculous scientific knowledge in the Quran or the Hadith, and we can investigate that. And I was a biology and philosophy major. He was communications major and pre-med and stuff like that. Smart guy. He knew his stuff. We could actually look through stuff seriously and know what we're talking about. So everything he said when we first met, that was all stuff we could investigate. If you say Islam makes sense to me and I feel the presence of God on my grandparents,
you can't argue with that.
What am I going to say? No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't feel the presence of God on your grandma. Like, how do you argue with that?
I've met her. She's awful. I don't know what she'd say.
Yeah, it's like, but it went from the realm of the falsifiable to the realm of the unfalsifiable.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. I'm thinking there's no evidence I can give you to convince you that you don't feel the presence of God on your grandma. So like, what do I even do at this point? And so after that was like, what do I do now? In apologetics or polemics, or what do I do against someone who's become unfalsifiable? But I realized, wait a minute, if you're taking that as evidence, you still might be given stronger evidence that outweighs that evidence. If you're taking this as some kind of evidence, then we can still have evidence that outweighs that, makes you think, okay, maybe my feeling about my grandma isn't the deciding factor in all of this. So we kept at it, and after a while, he got to the point where he's just, Islam makes sense to me, but these guys have evidence for everything they believe. He didn't tell me this until after he became a Christian, but he said when we would go through the historical reliability of the New Testament, or when we would go through why Christians believe Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead, he told me later, he said, every time we went through this stuff, I would be thinking to myself, wow, I thought these guys had nothing, but they have really good reasons for what they believe. And so that started bothering him. And so he told me, again, later on after he converted, what would happen in his mind is, well, these guys actually have good reasons for everything they believe. But even if they show me with 99% certainty that all these things are true, I'm still 100% certain that Islam is true because of the scientific miracles and because of the perfect preservation of the Quran and because of the amazing character of Muhammad. Hence the importance of us going through all those issues eventually. And so then he started saying that he has doubts about all these things. And then he went into this different mode where it was, we're all human beings, we have biases, we're raised to think certain things, and we only know a tiny fraction of what can be known. So I can't tell what's true. I don't think God is going to hold me accountable if I get this wrong. So I'm just going to remain a Muslim. And so that was another like, oh no, what do I do here? Fortunately, he continued wanting to pursue, but he prayed to God one night. He was on a trip with his dad. He was in a hotel room, and he prayed, and he said, God, I know I'm biased here. I see good reasons to believe in Christianity, but Islam still makes sense to me. I don't know what to do here. So you're going to have to tell me. He said, so can you give me a vision to tell me what to do? And whatever vision you give me, I'll follow it. And he said, the room he was in faded to black and all he saw were crosses.
Oh my.
And then he said he prayed, well, that may be it, but how do I know my mind's just not playing tricks on me? He said, so can you give me a dream? And then he had this weird dream where he's up on a mountain and he's up on this mountain with everyone, all his family and stuff. They're all on this mountain. All of a sudden he zooms out to a different view from a different mountain. And he's looking, it's not a mountain. It's on this giant like reptilian thing. And he goes, whoa, we're all in this giant reptilian thing. And this giant reptile turns and he said this giant boy walks up and says, I know what you are, talking to the reptile, and says, I know what you are, I challenge you to a fight. And he says the boy smushes the reptile. And then the reptile's enraged, the reptile turns to him and it goes to attack him. And then he says, but the boy has a cricket with a sword, and the cricket with a sword pops out and chops the reptile's head off, right? And so he tells me this, and he tells multiple people this, and they're like, so it sounds like the reptile thing is something you are already part of, and then you see it from a different angle and you realize it's bad. And then there's a boy, which he interpreted as me. I challenge you to fight. Yeah, okay. He interprets the boy as me, and he interprets the cricket as Christ with a sword to chop its head off right before it destroys him. And so he told this to everyone, even his family. They said, oh, you have to break out our books on dream interpretation. And he looks it up and it's like the reptilian iguana thing, that's an enemy. And a boy is a friend and a cricket is a protector and all this stuff. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute, this all fits exactly what I thought. But then he thought to himself, well, there's a lot of symbolism and so on. I'm not going to base my conversion, possibly my eternal destiny, on something that I'm interpreting. So he prayed. He said, God, can you give me a dream I don't have to interpret? And so after
the crosses weren't enough.
Yeah.
So let's keep going.
So after that, he had another dream, and he calls me up one day. He calls me up. He said, hey, are there dreams in Christianity? And I go, well, I mean, in the Bible, people had dreams telling them what to do and stuff. Yeah, so you got Joseph there, and then Joseph in the Old Testament, Joseph in the New Testament. You had people getting dreams in the Bible, getting warned by dreams and stuff. And he goes, okay, how do you interpret this? He said, I'm standing outside this narrow doorway, and I look in, and you're inside there, and you're at this big feast. And you're all looking, you're waiting for someone to show up to the feast. And I can't get in. The door's just narrow enough for me to get in, but I'm outside. And he says, and I look in and I call out and I say, David, I thought we were supposed to eat together. And he said, you didn't even look over at me. You just go, you never responded. And he goes, so any idea what that could mean? And I go, open your Bible to Luke. And he said, this is a Bible I'd given him. It's like a, I don't know, NIV study Bible or something like that. This was some study Bible. But he said he opened it up to the passage, and the heading was the narrow door, right? Oh. And he looked, and that's where you will be outside the feast, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and you'll see the feast of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and stuff. And it was funny because when he asked me about it, when he said, "Hey, how do you interpret this?" He said the first thing I said was, "I don't need to interpret it. It's straight out of the Bible. You just dreamed yourself right into a parable of the Bible." And it was that I don't need to interpret it. It's like, wait, I prayed this for something that I wouldn't need to interpret. Wow. And he still didn't become a Christian after that. He said, okay, two dreams is good. Could I have a third one? And his third dream was he's in a mosque. He's waiting for the leader of his sect to arrive in the mosque. And he's sitting on some steps inside the mosque. There's a stairway. He's sitting on the steps. Anyway, the leader of his sect shows up and sits down on the floor in front of him. And you can't be seated higher than the leader. So he said, I tried to get down off the steps, but I was blocked. I can't get off the steps. And so he said, I have to go around. And he said, I turned and looked, and the steps were leading up out of the mosque. And so the only way out of this was to leave the mosque and so on. And even then it was months. It was months after that of discussions and so on before it's kind of funny the way he told me he became a Christian. We ended up going to Chinese restaurant. It was me and probably 5 or 6 Christian friends and Nabil. And we get our plates, and then we say, all right, who's going to pray? And Nabil goes, I'll pray. And everyone's like, oh boy. I'm like, okay, well, let's see what this is like. And he goes, Lord, bless this food. And he says a little prayer, and he goes, and I pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I just thought, wow, everyone at the table got it instantly, but I've been arguing with him for so long, it didn't hit me. I was like, gosh, he's hanging out with us so much now, he even prays like a Christian. He's hanging out with us so long, he even prays like a Christian now, when that was him telling us that he had become a Christian.
Wow.
Anyway, so yep, that's when I thought I was done with Islam, right then. I was like,
Oh my
cool, I'm
gosh.
done studying this stuff. I'm not interested.
At some point, every seeker reaches a crossroads, and questions begin to pop up in their minds. It's the moment when questions are no longer theoretical, when truth is no longer something you debate, but something you must either accept or walk away from. For many Muslims, that moment comes when the reasons they were given all their lives begin to crumble. What once felt unshakable, tradition, certainty, inherited belief, suddenly feels fragile under honest examination, and that can be terrifying. Because when belief has been built on authority rather than truth, questioning it feels like standing alone in the dark. But here's the beautiful tension of the gospel. God is not afraid of honest questions. Christianity does not ask you to silence your mind. It invites you to love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And when seekers begin to compare claims, test evidence, and examine the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, something unexpected often happens. The light begins to break through, not all at once, not without struggle, but persistently. Many who leave Islam don't do so because Christianity feels easier, but because it proved stronger. Because the message of Christ did not collapse under scrutiny. Because grace replaced fear and truth replaced obligation. And somewhere in that process, the question shifts. It's no longer, does this make sense to me? It becomes, what if this is actually true? And when that question takes root, a soul is already on sacred ground. As the story continues, you'll hear how that inner struggle led to a moment of surrender. Not to an argument, but to Jesus himself. A moment when seeking turned into knowing. And faith was no longer inherited, but chosen. This is where conviction becomes transformation.
This is what I was kind of leading up to before, that all these negative features of Islam, these psychological barriers. So the worst possible sin is saying Jesus Christ is Lord. It's the worst sin you can commit in Islam. You're going to have to give up your family or have a very strained relationship with your family forever. And beyond that, the penalty for leaving Islam, according to Muhammad, is death. Muhammad said, if anyone leaves his Islamic religion, kill him. And so fortunately, it doesn't get carried out much in the West because lots of Muslims believe you need an Islamic state to be carrying that out, and not just like a random person doing it. So that's fortunate. But there's nothing that says, oh, only in an Islamic state. So you always have to wonder, is someone going to carry this penalty out at some point? So anyway, when we're preaching the gospel, the good news, what a Muslim is hearing is, oh, you want me to believe this thing, which will force me to give up my family, my friends. I don't just mean mom and dad. I mean cousins, aunts, uncles, my entire community. I have to give all that up and maybe get my head chopped off and then definitely get me sent to hell. Like you guys are calling that the good. It sounds like the worst news ever. You guys are calling it the good news. But all these things actually become good because when a Muslim has wrestled with these issues and eventually gets to the point where he thinks, you know what? I may have to give up my entire family. And this may get my head chopped off. And I've been told all my life this will get me sent to hell. You know what? I want to know Jesus anyway. That's someone who is already like that's someone who will lay down his life for Jesus. He's already willing to give up everything to know Jesus. And so it's not this easy, hey, why don't you pray with me to receive Christ? And it's not costing a person anything. It's already costing him everything.
I see.
And so that's someone who will lay down his life for Jesus. And that's why I realized afterwards, oh, these guys make really awesome Christians. That's why I kept up with it afterwards. I gave away my old channel.
Okay.
And I was just going to delete it. And someone said, well, if you're going to just delete it, why don't you give it to someone else? So I gave it to Hatun Tash, who's an ex-Muslim from Turkey in the UK, who's going to Speaker's Corner and stuff. And I was like, hey, I have way more subscribers and stuff. I had about 700,000. I was like, hey, if you want that channel, you can have it. I'm going to take down most of my old videos because I had just become like the main attack point for complaints. And so YouTube just got to the point where they're banning, they weren't banning it, like everything I would post would get flagged for some reason. It was always bogus. I always followed the rules.
Yeah.
And I would always win the appeals, but sometimes it would be quick. It would take a couple hours, but sometimes it would take weeks going back and forth because you can't get them to sit down and watch your entire video. And you say, there's nothing like you're saying. We've flagged this video for supporting a terrorist organization. There's nothing in there about any of that. It's me talking about Jesus. What are you talking about? It can take forever to actually get them to go through and remove the strike and so on. But I just realized I've been targeted. Somehow I was on a list at YouTube, flag everything this guy puts out and stuff. And I'm just like, and it got worse every year. And so it's the point where I was just fighting not to put out more content, but just to keep my old content up. And I'm just thinking, do I want to spend the next 20 years of my life just fighting just to keep my content up? No, I'd rather just burn it all to the ground and start over.
So that's what you did?
Yeah, I did. So I have a YouTube channel now. They don't mess with me at all because I know, basically I kind of laid low for a while, let other channels become popular as well.
Yep.
And now there's a bunch of channels that are dealing with Islam. And then I also know, okay, this is what kind of set them off at various times. So dial those things back a little bit. And now YouTube doesn't mess with me at all. Probably, I think we got on YouTube in like 2007 or 2008, right after it came out.
Whoa, but I didn't realize that.
We weren't focusing on YouTube back then. Back then it was mainly, we would announce, hey, we're going to be speaking at this church, at this place, and people would message us, oh, I can't be there because I live in this country. And then we're like, okay, we'll toss that on this new thing, YouTube, and then anyone in the world can watch it. And so that was our only intention for YouTube and so on. Eventually, we made a video. We were just goofing off. You may remember this, but this was a long time ago. There was a guy, it was Pastor Terry Jones, and he was going to have a Burn the Quran Day in Florida. I actually debated the guys, like, seriously, you want to start, you want to respond with book burnings and stuff? We had a debate about that. But at the same time, when I was debating this guy, I was thinking, Uthman, the third of the rightly guided caliphs, burned all the Qurans. So by the time you get to the third of the rightly guided caliphs, so you have Muhammad, then you have Abu Bakr, then you have Umar, then you have Uthman.
Okay.
By the time you're at Uthman, there are so many differences in the Quran that he has to order the entire Muslim community to hand over their Qurans. And he burns them all and issues a standardized Quran. And I'm thinking, why are they getting mad at this guy burning a Quran, which isn't affecting the Quran? There's Qurans all over, but they're not getting mad that this guy burned all the Qurans. How are you not mad about that, right? So we made a video and it's called The Original Burn the Quran Day. And it's just me and Nabil goofing off where we're reading all these passages. This is what changed our mind about the significance of YouTube.
All right.
So we make a video and I'm sitting there, and it's funny because we we planned this, how I was going to be a Quran burner and Nabil's going to come up and start arguing with me. So I'm there and we realized none of us had a lighter and stuff. So I just took a stick and I start rubbing the stick like I'm starting a fire by rubbing a stick in a pile of Islamic books. And Nabil walks in and we're like, over the top ridiculous acting. And he walks in, David, what are you doing? You're not going to burn these books, are you? And I'm like, well, the thought had crossed my mind. He goes, no, books are filled with valuable knowledge. Here, I'll open one to a random page. And he opens it up and it's about Uthman burning all the Qurans. And then we're shocked, right? We're shocked that they were burning Qurans. And then we're like, we got to go through. And we just we're pretending to open these things randomly. But it's about all the changes to the Quran. Verses eaten by a sheep, entire chapters being forgotten because people forgot to recite them and so on. And we're just going through this and by the end we're like, hey, it's good that we're not burning these books because they contain all this information about the history of the Quran and so on. So we were just goofing off. We had been doing shows in a studio and we're hanging out with guys afterwards and we make this video. We stick it on YouTube, just joking. Yeah. And it was, I forget, it was like a week or 10 days later, it had hit 100,000 views.
Whoa.
And that's when I clicked on YouTube analytics for the first time. I had no idea what analytics of what. And I clicked on it and it told you where people are watching it. It's like at the top was the United States. Next it would be like UK and then Canada and so on. Got down to like 6th or 7th or 8th place or whatever it was. And it said it was either 3.6 or 3.8% Pakistan. And I just looked at that and I go, 3.6% of 100, that's 3,600 people in Pakistan who just watched all this stuff that's in their sources that you couldn't tell them if you went there. They'd form a mob as soon as you started talking about the Quran being changed and stuff like that. They'd form a mob and they'd beat you to death. And it just hit me right there. It's wait, for 14 centuries, Muslim leaders have been able to keep their people insulated from hearing any criticisms of anything they're saying and from hearing any alternative position presented to them. Their leaders have been able, especially in places like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and so on, they've been able to keep their people insulated from hearing a serious presentation of the gospel. Because you have missionaries who go over there, and if you were at all successful and people started converting to Christianity, you're going to get your head chopped off. And so it just hit me like we have just reached a new era of history where they can no longer keep their people insulated, which means we now have access to people in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and all these places through the internet. And that was just like, I don't want to go around speaking anymore. I mean, I'll do it if someone asks, but I would rather just sit here and make videos in front of my camera and have people in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and everyone around the world watching it. And so that's why I really focused on YouTube after that.
Did you come at the topic systematically, or did you just start making videos on whatever you were interested in?
Basically, whatever I was interested in, but I'd learned from Muslims what their main reasons were for believing in Islam. And I've been going through the sources with Nabil and learning responses to those. And it's almost always the case that what they're told is not what their sources say. And so it was just, hey, you've heard this, let's see what it says. And also Christian apologetics. Hey, you've been told Christians can't support this, and I'll make a video about it. And so it was just like that. It was all based on discussions with him, and then just kind of making videos about all the stuff I'd learned over time. And so just kept doing that and found out, well, Muslims around the world had the same sort of objections and issues and so on. So let's just make that common knowledge. That's been kind of the goal. Make the criticisms common knowledge, make the responses to arguments common knowledge.
I see.
And then you also, because then I found out over time that I'm not just talking to Muslims, it's Christians who are talking to the Muslim friend, and their Muslim friend says, this is a scientific miracle. How could Muhammad have known this? And so they go look it up and, oh wait, now here's a video waiting for them.
What many people don't realize is that leaving Islam is rarely a sudden moment. It's a long season of inner war. Doubt doesn't arrive all at once. It whispers, it unsettles, and it presses on the conscience late at night when no one else is watching. And often, the more a Muslim begins to doubt, the more devout they appear on the outside, praying harder, speaking louder, and clinging tighter to what they've always known. Because doubt feels dangerous. To question is to risk everything, and to be wrong is to lose everything. Yet God has a way of meeting people right in that tension. Again and again, former Muslims describe the same pattern. The more they tried to silence their questions, the louder the truth became. And no matter how deeply fear was ingrained, it could not erase a growing realization that Christianity was not built on blind faith, but on evidence, history, and a risen Savior. This is where many begin to see Jesus differently. Not as a distant prophet, not as a forbidden name, but as the one who invites the weary, the burdened, and the fearful to come and find rest. And here's the miracle. God does not coerce, nor does he threaten. Instead, he reveals. For those willing to keep seeking, the gospel begins to feel less like an enemy and more like home. The message of grace pierces through years of fear-based belief. And slowly, the soul realizes something extraordinary. If truth is real, it must be followed, no matter the cost. As David Wood continues, you'll hear how persistence, prayer, and honest confrontation with truth led to a breaking point. Not of despair, but of clarity. This is where searching turns into surrender, and where God proves he was guiding the journey all along.
Back then, it was tons and tons and tons of death threats.
Really? And how did were they comments on YouTube? Was it email? How did you get it, and what did they say?
All of those and tons of them. I mean, I get 40 or 50 death threats a day, and I'm going to kill you. It's going to be your wife. It's going to be your kids. All that stuff. Emails, comments on Facebook, tweets, mostly YouTube in response to videos and stuff like that. But yeah, emails. And it was way worse back then, way worse, because there are only a few people doing it. There are only a few people criticizing Islam publicly. And as long as there's like 2, 3, 4 people, and back then there was very few people. There was Samuel Green down in Australia. Okay. There was Jay Smith in the UK. There's Tony Costa up in Canada. And there were like a couple of us in America. Now, there are other people who are like writing articles and stuff like that, but as far as people like putting their faces out there and talking about this stuff, there's a handful, but that means you know exactly who to target with threats and so on. It's way better now that there's way more people. Now you have tons of ex-Muslims, because back then you had very few ex-Muslims who were known to be ex-Muslims. Now there are ex-Muslims everywhere.
Really?
I mean, all over the place. And
wow. I'd love to hear more about that.
And the YouTube algorithm now has been programmed to detect death threats. So when I get a death threat on YouTube now, it's like worded oddly. If you just say, I'm going to kill you, that instantly, I'll see it pop up. If I'm on there when you get your update and stuff like that, I'll see it. And then like a second later, it disappears. So, or when I refresh the page, it disappears. So now they're way less frequent. In fact, so, the official statistics are among young Muslims. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, the statistic was 24% of young Muslims are leaving Islam. That's up from what was close to 0%, just if you go back 2 decades. So the apostasy rate among young Muslims went from around 0% to 24%. Now the most recent one was 26%. So you've got that. You've got statistics that show that between 60 and 70% of Muslims who convert to Islam leave it within a couple of years. So people who are, hey, I'm converting to Islam, and then they find out, oh, there's all this stuff I wasn't told before as part of the deal, and then they leave Islam. So most people, so if anyone's watching, they're going, oh, my cousin converted to Islam, what am I going to do? Probably going to leave Islam within the next couple of years, because that's just that's what's been happening. But I only started keeping track because back when I was getting started, it was standard. It was standard in Christianity, among Christians, that you don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran. You don't do it. Back then, it was, and I always tell people, they have no idea how much it sucked back then. When I say there was only a few of us dealing with Islam that were actually, going after Muslim arguments and stuff, back then, I'm talking 2008, 2009, if you were going after Islam, you got blasted by everyone. So you're getting death threats heaped on you from Muslims. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill your wife. We're going to kill your family, all this stuff. We're going to do this to your mom, blah, blah, blah. Atheists, this was the height of the new atheism. So the new atheist responses you got, there were always atheists who were like, I hope you're successful, right? Because there were always atheists who were like, okay, I think all this is nonsense, but I'd rather have Christianity than Islam.
Sam Harris
so you had
types.
those, you had those guys. But you also had just tons of the new atheists who, their response was, how dare you criticize another religion when you're religious too, and all religions are stupid, you giant hypocrite. So you're getting blasted there. But then even Christians, we're supposed to be loving, and this is hurting their feelings. How are you attacking Muhammad when this is so dear to them? You're just going to drive them away. You're just going to drive them away. And I heard this for years from Christians, and I was like, me criticizing Muhammad doesn't drive them. They can't stay away from me. They come right at me. They come right at me and start arguing. Where are you saying this is going to drive them away and they're never going to talk to you again? And I actually had to try and figure out where that idea came up among Christians, because again, it was standard. There was every Christian you talk to almost was telling you, don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran. You're just going to drive them away, and you'll never be able to reach them with the gospel. And so I was trying to figure this out. I eventually tracked it down to 2 sources. 2 sources I found this. One, it was Christians who heard from a missionary, right? You'd have missionaries over in Muslim countries, and they come back and they give a presentation on reaching Muslims and stuff like that. And they would say, don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran. Well, that makes sense if you're a missionary in Pakistan. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Now, we're talking about us here, but everyone's hearing, don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran. It's just going to enrage them. And I'm thinking, okay, so you guys are taking advice from people where it makes sense and then applying it here where it doesn't make sense. So I'm not taking that seriously. The other source of this information was from interfaith dialogues, where the Muslim speaker would say, isn't it great that we're building bridges and all getting together for these discussions, and we've got a Jew here and the Jews watching, and we've got a Christian here and the Christians watching, and we all get to speak and get along. Isn't this great? Just so you know, if you want to keep these bridges going, if you want to continue having these discussions, never criticize Muhammad or the Quran, because then there won't be any bridges and we won't have any of these discussions. And so Christians will be telling me this. And I heard from this guy at the interfaith meeting, he said, don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran because we want to build bridges and you're just trying to burn the bridges down. What's wrong with you? And I'm going, wait, let me repeat to you what you just said. You tell me if you think this makes sense. You're telling me that you believe that this Muslim speaker talking to a bunch of Christians and telling them, if you want to effectively share the gospel with Muslim, don't do these things. And you think this Muslim speaker is trying to give you valuable insights into reaching Muslims with the gospel. That's your takeaway there. You think this guy is trying to tell you how to reach Muslims with the gospel. That's what you believe? And kind of just saying it, they kind of,
Fair point.
maybe I shouldn't. Because I'm like, if I'm hearing from a Muslim speaker who's telling me how to preach the gospel, I'm probably going to think I need to do the exact opposite of what this guy's saying, because there's no way he's actually trying to help me reach Muslims with the gospel. And so I realized, though, it was so ingrained that I just kind of had to show them. I was like, okay, I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and you guys keep doing what you're doing.
We'll see who wins.
We'll see. And so eventually, I always, like when you post, hey, this guy after watching my videos says he left Islam and now he's a Christian, because people would send me those messages. And I never wanted to share those because it was like bragging, like I'm so great or something.
Yeah.
Like, look at me, guys. Look, this guy converted after watching some of my stuff. But at the same time, I was constantly receiving the messages, don't ever do this or it'll just drive Muslims away. And I needed to respond to that.
Yeah.
So when that would come up, when someone important would say, David, you're just driving Muslims away. You're doing so much harm. We're never going to be able to talk to Muslims. I would start posting batches of 10, right? 10.
To where?
To YouTube. Okay. I would say, hey, so-and-so says, David, you're just driving Muslims away and now they'll never take the gospel seriously. Well, to respond to that, we have these 10 testimonies that I took screenshots of. David, I used to hate you. I was just watching your videos to expose them because my cousins were watching them, and I realized I had to refute you. And just so you know, I left Islam and now I'm a Christian. It was like that over and over again. And it wasn't. I couldn't keep it up for long because you get tons and tons of comments. You have to actually go through them to find these. But for about a month and a half, when I was trying to respond to these guys who were constantly, this will never work, David. It'll never work. You're doing it all wrong. I would start screenshotting when I saw comments from Muslims saying, hey, thank you for your videos. I just left Islam. And when I was doing that, I was able for a month and a half to post between 1 and 3 of those every single day for a month and a half.
Whoa.
Just based on the comments I was getting every day.
Yep.
And it was just, hey, you guys tell me this. Check out these 3 from today. And fortunately, people caught on after a while. It's like, wait a minute. We're saying this never works. And almost every Muslim we hear from, every ex-Muslim we hear from only converted to Christianity or only left Islam after hearing Muhammad and the Quran blasted and destroying all those reasons. Think about how that ties into Nabil. We're talking about Christianity for a couple years and Christian topics. He didn't convert. Even after realizing, wow, we have great evidence for what we believe. He didn't convert. Why? He still thinks he has 100% certainty. He thinks he has 100% certainty because his mind has been filled with all these false claims about scientific miracles, about the miraculous perfect preservation of the Quran, about Muhammad being the greatest man of all time. All these arguments that his head is filled with all these, he thinks it gives him 100% certainty. Nothing can ever compete with that. He's never going to take any alternative seriously. He's never going to take the gospel seriously. It's not until the confidence in those issues is shaken that you're actually able, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to take a closer look at this. So I would estimate probably at least 95% of the ex-Muslims I've ever heard from only left Islam after having all these arguments and stuff wrecked in front of their faces. Like realize, oh, all this stuff is that I've been told all my life, it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. That's when they start taking some, that's when they start, oh, I need to investigate this myself. Because how it works, they just have immense confidence in their imams, their parents, their sheikhs, and so on, that what they're being told is true. And you eventually say, actually, that's what you've been told? Here, let me show you that's wrong. And they're confused. It's, But they'll do the same thing. They'll go back to the same sheikh and, how do I explain this? And then they'll get the new explanation. Then they'll come back. And then you'll look at it and go, that's wrong too. I can show you from your sources that's false. And this will happen several times. They'll keep going back to the same sheikh. They'll keep going back to the same imam. But eventually there's like this light switch moment when it's, wait a minute, this guy's told me this stuff all my life. All my confidence in Islam is based on what this guy has been telling me. And this Christian keeps showing me that what this guy's saying is false. And he's using my sources to show me that according to my own sources, what that guy said is false. And eventually there's light goes on. It's maybe I can't trust that guy with my entire salvation and everything else. maybe I need to look into this for myself. And the moment he says, I need to look into this for myself, I can't just have this confidence in this guy. That's when they're on their way out of Islam. That's when it's starting. They're about to leave Islam because they're going to look into all this for themselves. And they're going to find out that it's none of this stuff stands up to scrutiny. Way more so back in the day. Way more so back in the day. Back when it was, here's how you do it, and just preach the gospel. And it's weird because, like, if people say, hey, I just preach the gospel to Muslims, I'm fine, cool, awesome. Yeah, because guess what? There are Muslims who've already been wrestling with the issues. They just need someone preaching the gospel. They need a friend who's preaching the gospel to them. So I'm fine with that. I've never been one who's like, this is my way, and this is the way. Yeah, no, not everyone needs to be doing things my way. In fact, one of the reasons I was doing things my way was, okay, there's a bunch of people doing it that way. Someone needs to be doing it this way. Someone needs to be blasting away at this stuff. That's something else that I found out from Nabil, and I thought it was just Nabil. And then I found out, no, it's everyone else. It's everyone else too. And I even remember the moment we were watching, because we would watch Christian-Muslim debates, and there weren't a lot back then. But we watched, it was me and Nabil, and we were over at Mike Lacona's house, but Mike was somewhere else. So it's me and Nabil at Mike Lacona's house. He's a Christian New Testament scholar, and he lived in our area. But we were watching a debate between William Lane Craig and Jamal Badawi. And that was one of the most one-sided debates I'd ever seen. Craig annihilated everything Badawi said. Badawi couldn't answer anything Craig was saying. It was completely one-sided. And you always have Christians and Muslims who are just going to side with their guy no matter what. Nabil wasn't like that. If Nabil thought the Muslim lost, he thought he would say the Muslim lost. Like when Mike Lacona, our friend, debated Shabir Ali, Nabil said, yeah, I think Mike won that. Mike won that. So he can acknowledge when a Christian wins a debate. We watched that debate for some reason. By the end, Badawi was like flustered and he started yelling. Starts yelling, right? Now, when you or I see a debater get flustered and frustrated and start yelling.
Not a great sign.
For us, right? For us.
Aha.
We're sitting there thinking, oh, this guy, yeah, you know you're losing. You're getting desperate. Your emotions are taking over. William Lane Craig, totally calm. Why? He has no reason to get flustered or frustrated. He knows he's winning. And the Muslim guy's yelling because he's so desperate he doesn't know what to do. He's getting crushed. That's what you and I were seeing. We finished the debate. And I go, I would have scored it like 95-5, and I think that would be generous. It was a complete massacre. So I turned to Bill and I go, hey, so what'd you think of that debate? And he goes, Badawi clearly won.
What?
And I go, I was like legitimately confused. If it had been some other random Muslim, I'd say, okay, you're just siding with your guy. Nabil, I knew Nabil's not like that. So what was he just seeing? It took me a while to pry this out of them. But when he sees Muslim debater yelling, Christian completely calm, he's yelling because he has a righteous anger at the blasphemy being put out by this Christian. And so it is a righteous, godly anger that the Christian is leading people astray. The Christian is calm because deep down, he doesn't believe what he's saying. He can't even get excited about it. He can't get excited. He can't get emotional about it because deep down, he knows he's wrong.
One of the most difficult moments in a seeker's journey is realizing that sincerity alone is not enough. Many Muslims are deeply sincere. They pray faithfully. They fast. They submit with everything they have. And yet sincerity does not guarantee truth, because truth must be tested, not inherited. This is where the contrast between Islam and Christianity becomes impossible to ignore. Islam often demands loyalty through fear of punishment, fear of shame, and fear of rejection. But the gospel calls through love. Jesus does not threaten the seeker. He invites them. He does not silence questions. Rather, he answers them. He does not demand submission at the edge of a sword, but at the foot of a cross. And for many who begin to see this difference, something profound happens. They realize that faith built on fear collapses under scrutiny. But faith grounded in truth grows stronger when examined. This is why the gospel continues to break through walls that once seemed impenetrable. Not because Christians are louder, but because the truth of Christ stands firm when tested. When claims are examined, when history is questioned, and when the resurrection is placed under the light. And here's the moment that changes everything. When a Muslim begins to understand that salvation is not earned, but given, that forgiveness is not negotiated, but freely offered, and that Jesus did not come to dominate, but to die and to rise again. At that point, The cost is still high. The fear is still real, but the question becomes unavoidable. What is my soul worth? As David continues, you'll hear how confronting truth, without compromise, creates a breaking point where fear loses its grip, and Christ steps fully into view. Watch till the end, because this is where light overtakes darkness.
That's what I mean. It's like, Nabil? I understand a guy, from, like Pakistan where they form the mobs or something like this, just where emotion is in charge of everything. But Nabil, how is he? So at first I thought it was like Nabil, and it was like, oh, these guys have a more respect for an aggressive, in-your-face, yelling approach. Again, I thought that was him. And after he became a Christian, we both started debating. We started debating Muslims. And then I would get up there in these early debates. I would present all the information that I wanted to present, but I would do it as gently as possible, like as gently as I could be. Like, because there's nice little old Muslim ladies sitting in the front row. Like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I want this information in your head, but I'm not trying to be mean about it or something. But then the response from the Muslims would be, haha, he's so weak. And it's like, and one day I just got ticked off and I just went and spit it like, how can you believe this stuff? Oh my goodness, do you know what your prophet did to that little girl? And they walked out of there and they're going, oh, he's destroying our religion, oh my goodness. And I'm like, wait, you're just paying attention to how I say it? That's it? You're paying attention to how I'm saying it? You're not actually, it's not the information. It's like my demeanor and my attitude and how confident I am. And what's crazy is, once you realize that, you can see it all the way through the Muslim sources. There's a story in Ibn Asaq where two brothers, Mu'ayisa and Huayisa, I forget which one converted. One of the two brothers converted to Islam. Or this is during the time of Muhammad. One of the two brothers converts to Islam, Mu'ayisa and Huayisa. And then Muhammad tells his followers, go kill any Jew who falls into your power. They're mad at Jews at this point. So Muhammad says, go kill any Jew that falls into your power. And the brother who had converted goes out and kills a Jew. And his brother's like, that was our family friend, man. That was our family friend.
That was Darren.
We have business relations with him. You just ruined our business relations. And his brother says, if Muhammad told me to kill you, I'd kill you too. And his brother says, wow, any religion that brings you to this must be the truth.
Oh.
And so that mentality is completely foreign to us. It's, hey, we're sitting around, we're brothers, we're sitting around all day, we're watching cartoons on Saturday, eating Doritos, and all of a sudden you're ready to go on a killing spree. Something big must have changed. And so for them, it's a sign of the truth, that if something is making you so aggressive and violent that you're ready to kill over it, you must know what you're talking about. You're not just gonna kill over it, so you must know. And so they rest their confidence in what you believe based on how violent it's making you. And you can, again, once you spot this, you can see it in the Muslim sources, because after Muhammad died, you had a bunch of people left Islam after Muhammad died, because they were only in Islam because they were scared of Muhammad. There were people who converted to Islam just because they didn't want to get killed by Muhammad. So Muhammad dies and a bunch of people left Islam. Now they left Islam in various ways. Some just were not Muslims anymore, but others just said, we're still Muslims, we're still gonna pray 5 times a day, we're still gonna do all this stuff, but we're not paying our zakat. We're not paying our zakat. That's like their alms. We're not paying it to the government. I'll go give alms to someone in private. I don't have to give it to you. Abu Bakr put them in the exact same category, the apostate category. You're apostates. If you're not doing what your leader tells you, you're an apostate too. And I'm coming to kill you. And Umar, who became the second of the rightly guided caliphs, but he's there, he starts arguing with Abu Bakr, wait a minute, Muhammad said there's only a couple reasons you can kill a Muslim. You can kill him for apostasy, you can kill him for killing someone else, you can kill him for adultery, but you can't kill them for not paying their zakat properly. And Abu Bakr saying, no, if they're not doing it, then they are in the apostate category. And Umar said something very interesting. He said, I could tell by the heaving of his chest that he was right. Like, he got so enraged when I said, don't kill them as apostates. He got so enraged that I knew he must have been right. Something is enraging you that much, then you must know it. And I don't know. I'm like on the fence kind of, or I lean in this direction, but you're so confident that you must be right. And so this is all connected to, if you go down to today, someone criticizes the Quran in Pakistan, mob forms around them and beats the person to death. That's how you show that you have the truth. You just get violent over it, and that's somehow a sign that you have the truth on your side. Whereas we look at that and go, if you guys can't respond with an argument to show why the person's wrong, and you just instantly start killing the person, we think that's a weakness. They think it's a strength. Philosophy it didn't really last.
No, it didn't.
So yeah, you've always had people, and you have people still today trying to defend it philosophically and so on. It's just it's not mainstream.
Yeah.
And wherever it's mainstream. Like if it's if it becomes mainstream for Islamic apologetics in like America and so on, it's basically, this is what's appealing to you guys, and so we're going to adapt for you. But yeah, you would have science take off for a little while in Islam. You'd have philosophy take over for a while in Islam. You'd have all their writings, but then it gets suffocated. It gets suffocated by like what Islam really is. I don't have any statistics, but yes, there are plenty of people who, David, thank you for helping me leave Islam, and they become an atheist or an agnostic because, and you can see why, right? Like if I say, hey, here are all these reasons that what you've been told all your life are complete nonsense, and then you realize, whoa, I can't trust that sheikh and what he told me all my life. Just because you recognize you've been given terrible arguments all your life doesn't mean you therefore accept the Christian arguments. In fact, it's a fairly common response. I don't trust any of this religious stuff.
Right.
And because simultaneously you also had the new atheists going along and blasting away, saying, all these religions are just based on nonsense. This is the only position that makes sense, and so on. So you did have tons of people like that. Again, I don't have any official numbers, but I can say both. Yeah, both. And you can actually see why, because you have people who leave Islam like Nabil, where, okay, these arguments from Muhammad that I've heard all my life, now I've investigated them, there's no good reasons to think that these arguments actually stand up to scrutiny. But he still believes in God, he still respects Jesus, and so on. And so it's very natural for people in that position to say, okay, I still believe in God, I still believe in Jesus, let me take a look at Christianity. It's like the natural alternative. So those guys tend to become Christians. But you also have the reaction of, I just don't trust religious people, all they do is lie.
Right,
and so
that makes sense. Have you ever had missionaries from Muslim-run countries reach out to you and tell you to cool it because you're making things difficult for them over there?
I've heard lots of people say that I'm going to do that. I haven't heard much from missionaries in Muslim countries say I'm ruining things, because my message to all of them has always been, throw me under the bus if you need to, right? Like, if you're talking to someone, they're like, oh, are you like David Wood? David Wood? No, that guy's a jerk, man. Do I act like that? I don't act like that. Yeah, we can't stand that dude. Throw me under the bus in a heartbeat, and then you'll be their friend.
Think like Islam means peace, and a Muslim. No, it doesn't. What does peace mean?
What is Islam mean?
What is like submission for the sake of peace? Isn't this what it means? Or,
yeah, they start tossing peace in there because the root is related.
Salem?
But Islam, it means submission or surrender. That's the actual definition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so there you go. So if someone says, well, as a Muslim or Islam, this means like someone who submits to God, I just don't grant that. So I prefer to call them Mohammedanism and Mormonism, because I like to kind of attribute that group to the heretical founder. I would think of Muhammad more as a heretic. But
let me tell you why you're right there.
Okay.
Because
I love being told why I'm right. So this is, take your time here.
It's actually a really important point. I'm not telling people what to call them and stuff, but as far as why that's actually significant, Muslims claiming, hey, Islam just means submission, that's what the word means, submission or surrender, and in its religious context, submission or surrender to Allah. They'll use that in dawah. That's like their version of like evangelism and apologetics and stuff, dawah. But you'll have Muslim dawah guy, da'is, they're called. They'll use that as their argument. Hey, let me ask you, Matt, do you believe in submitting to God?
Yes.
We've got an entire religion that's submitting to God. Why would you object to Islam when all it is submission to God? Jews, Christians, you all believe in submitting to God. Here's the religion that's defined in its name by submission to God. So why would you object to a religion that's all about submission to God? That's what it is. Now, why I'm telling you you're right is, it's Surah 4, verse 65 of the Quran. Surah 4, so everyone can look it up. Surah 4, verse 65 of the Quran says, Allah says to Muhammad, they can have no real faith until they make you, Muhammad, judge in all disputes between them, and have no resistance against anything you've decided, and accept all of your decisions with full submission. So, Islam is the religion of submission to Allah, But the only way you can submit to Allah is by submitting to everything Muhammad says. So, I mean, just imagine that. Hey, guys, you want to submit to God? Yeah, we want to submit to God. Okay, then you have to submit to everything I say, and you can't question anything I say ever.
If I started a religion, I would definitely do that.
That's exactly what I would do if I were starting a religion, right? Hey, you believe in submission to God? Yeah, okay, then you can only submit to God by submitting to me. And that's why the submission is actually to Muhammad, and that's why it does make sense to call it Mohammedanism.
When fear finally loosens its grip, something remarkable happens. The seeker is no longer asking, "What will I lose?" Rather, they begin to ask, "What have I found?" For many Muslims who come to Christ, the final turning point is not an argument. It's a realization that truth does not need to be protected by threats, that God does not require fear to defend himself, and that love, not force, is the true mark of divine authority. Jesus stands completely apart. He does not compel belief through intimidation or opposition. He allows himself to be questioned, rejected, even crucified. And yet, he rises. For those who have spent their lives under the weight of fear-based belief, this changes everything. Because a Savior who willingly lays down his life for his enemies reveals a God who is not trying to control you, but redeem you. That realization is terrifying and freeing, all at once. It doesn't erase the cost. Families may still be lost, communities may still turn away, but something stronger takes root, a peace that fear can no longer touch. And that is why, when a Muslim chooses Christ, it is never a casual faith. It is a costly faith. It is faith refined by fire. It is faith that has looked truth in the face and refused to turn away. Remember this: no soul stumbles into Jesus by accident, and no honest search for truth goes unanswered. What you've listened to is more than a testimony. It's a reminder. God is still moving in places we're told he cannot reach. He is still calling people who were taught never to listen, and he is still revealing Jesus to hearts willing to seek truth, no matter the cost. The rise of Muslims leaving Islam for Christianity is not the result of coercion, manipulation, or emotional appeal. It is the fruit of light meeting darkness, of truth standing where fear once ruled, and of Jesus Christ doing what he has always done, calling people out of bondage and into life. Scripture tells us, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." That promise is still true today. For some, this story may feel distant. For others, uncomfortably close and direct. But no matter where you are, this truth remains. Jesus is not afraid of your unanswered questions. He is not threatened by your doubts. And he is not waiting to condemn you. He is waiting to receive you. If this message moved you, take a moment. Don't rush past it. Ask yourself, what if the truth is worth the cost? What if Jesus really is who he claimed to be? If you're seeking, keep seeking. If you're questioning, keep questioning. And if you're already walking with Christ, pray for those who are counting the cost right now. If this video encourages you, consider sharing it. Someone you may never meet could be searching in silence. Thank you for watching. May God guide your heart into truth, courage, and life. Stay with us, and may the light of Christ continue to shine abroad in your heart.